Okay, so what the fuck? Today we're going to talk about Conduction, the most normal, least broken mechanic in ULTRAKILL. In the right hands, it can clear entire waves of enemies, deal heaps of damage to bigger targets, and finally answer the question, what would ULTRAKILL look like running on a Nokia brick? There's a lot of nuance to how Conduction works, how it can be triggered, and how the electricity can be manipulated to maximize the carnage. So let's start with a simple definition and extrapolate it from there. So, what is Conduction? Well, conduction is an effect that occurs when a conductive enemy is hit with an electric shock, causing electricity to arc between grounded enemies and other conductive objects. Look, I am 5 drafts into the script, and this is the most concise and all-encompassing definition I could come up with. Let's start by breaking this down so we can grasp the basics of conduction. What do I mean by conductive enemy? Well, conduction can only proc on enemies with either nails or magnets embedded in them, making them conductive. Shocking a non-conductive enemy simply won't do anything, except deal the flat damage of the shock. Next, the electric shock. There are 3 ways that you can shock an enemy. You can zap them with the Jumpstart cable, shoot them with the electric Railcanon, or have them get hit by a Ferryman's lightning attacks. Each of these have their own nuances that we'll break down a bit later. Finally, the arc. Upon proccing conduction, any grounded enemy or other conductive object nearby will chain lightning between each other, dealing damage in the process. It's important to note that flying enemies like drones, virtues, and mind flayers won't get hit by any chain lightning from conducting. So, that's the basics. Now let's get into the nitty-gritty. Let's start with the electric Railcanon, as it is the simplest way to proc conduction. Simply just shoot a conductive enemy with a Railcanon, and that's it. Tutorial over. Nah, okay, but really though. A big advantage of the Railcanon is its speed, as you can whip this thing out very fast with minimal setup. The Jumpstart has a hefty 5-second wind-up time, and the Ferryman requires some precise positioning. All the Railcanon needs is a conductive target. You can also integrate conduction with all of your usual Railcanon tech by simply sticking a few nails or magnets into whatever you are already going to hit. Ultra Rico shots, rail coining, RCPs, they all get a little bit more spice when you toss in some conduction. Now something cool about the Railcanon is that it pierces enemies, meaning you can hit multiple conductive targets and proc Conductor several times at once. This is a particularly great edge guarding strategy, since enemies like to group up at the edge of the arena. Just cover them with nails and fire. Next, I want to talk about the Jumpstart. It's fairly simple on paper. You attach a cable to an enemy with the alt fire, stay within 20 meters of said enemy while the cable charges up, and after 5 seconds, zap. This 5 seconds gives us a lot of time to maximize our conduction damage, as the damage scales with how many nails and magnets are embedded in an enemy. Now, I could do a deep dive into the exact damage numbers of nails and magnets and how they're calculated, and I will, stay tuned, but for the purposes of this section, all we need to know is that more nails equals more damage. This damage caps at 6, with 90 nails embedded in an enemy. So, what's the fastest way to stick 90 nails in an enemy? Well, luckily for us, the Jumpstart has us covered. While we're cabled to an enemy, the Jumpstart's primary fire is increased by 50%, firing about 25 nails per second. Since the bonus nail damage caps at 90 nails, firing the Jumpstart for around 3.5 seconds will cap the damage. Alternatively, we can hit the cap even faster by using a technique known as overheat storage. When you fire the overheat nailgun's alt fire, it will shoot a burst of 56 nails for 1 second, and consume one of these overheat charges which go on cooldown once consumed. However, the charge is only consumed if the full volley is fired, and you can cancel the volley by switching weapons.
Then consider how firing a single shot from the attractor will fully charge the overheat burst. Putting all that together, you can fire an overheat burst, swap to the attractor, shoot once, swap back to the overheat, and repeat indefinitely. Now the Jumpstart cable takes 5 seconds to fully charge up before proccing, and in ULTRAKILL terms that may as well be 5 years. Luckily for us, we can actually saw that charge time down by using, well, saws. Each saw that hits a cabled enemy will cut the charge time down by 1 second per saw. So firing 4 or 5 saws into a cabled enemy will trigger the Jumpstart much faster than usual. It's for this reason that I like to have my attractor set to the saw blade launcher, so that when performing overheat storage I can cut the charge time down and conduct much faster. This is great for dealing with tankier targets that we can't easily burst down, like swords machines, gutter bros, and notably hideous masses who are almost one shot from this technique. There's an even easier way to trigger the Jumpstart early. Kill! If the cabled enemy dies, it will still conduct. A simple strategy to use here is to simply whiplash a fodder enemy to you, shoot the Jumpstart cable and a few nails into it, and then kill. You can kill the enemy any way you want, but my preferred method is to knuckle blast them into the ground. If they hit the ground and die before the cable snaps, it will conduct where they land, allowing you to launch an enemy like an electric grenade. It also works well on enemies with quick kills, notably the malicious phase as it dies to 1 overheat volley. Okay, I'm gonna be real, this is too much work. If only there was someone around here who could conduct for me. Oh hey! The Ferryman is our third way of proccing conduction, as any conductive enemy hit by a Ferryman's lightning will conduct. Now, in my first draft of the script, I had originally written this off as too niche and finicky to be used reliably, but then I sat down and messed around with it for a bit, and I gotta say, this shit kinda slaps. The Ferryman actually has 3 lightning attacks. The first and most obvious is the lightning that the Ferryman calls down in battle, marked by a white line stretching into the sky. This attack can actually be charge backed, and when you do, it will conduct any enemy that it hits. The chargeback is actually pretty simple. You simply wait for the sound cue of the lightning charging up and position yourself in the beam. Now, the beam tracks V1, but it's not very fast, so I recommend halting your horizontal velocity before attempting to charge back, as if you're moving too fast you'll miss it. The best ways to do this are to either slam or jump off a rocket mid-ride, as both methods will set your horizontal velocity to 0. Then once you're in position, wait for the blue flash and toss a coin directly up. Then you're riding the lightning. It should be noted that you don't strictly need to charge back the lightning, so long as a conductive enemy gets hit. It's just that this method deals more damage and is way cooler. The Ferryman can also trigger an electric blast around itself if it's either parried or hit with the Jumpstart cable while it's charging its lightning. Any conductive enemy caught in either of these blasts will conduct, and the key word there is any enemy, including the Ferryman itself. Nailing or magneting a Ferryman and simply parrying it will turn it into a walking human rights violation. Now we know the many ways that we can proc conduction, but conduction doesn't just stop there. I think it's high time that we finally talk about conductables. Magnets, coins, rockets, tethered chainsaws, and the screwdrivers, or conductables as I refer to them, can all be used to extend the range of a conduction chain, as well as stacking on more damage. The range at which these objects can chain lightning seems to be around 28.5 units. For reference, the radius of a core nuke is around 25 units. Magnets are fairly simple. You stick them into the ground or into other enemies, and they'll chain lightning if they're in range. You can use magnets to guide the electricity to wherever you want on the battlefield, usually towards more enemies. Conduction needs line of sight, so you can use magnets to snake the electricity around or over walls. Grounded magnets are usually a set and forget it type move, but if an enemy with a magnet in it is killed or the magnet is destroyed, it will return to V1, so you can redeploy it somewhere much more useful than in your inventory. Magnets have free HP and will lose 1 HP per conduction hit, however it will not lose any HP upon the initial proc. Coins behave much the same way, but require a little more attention. You can rapidly toss all 4 coins right after you start conducting, and you can toss them pretty much wherever you'd like. Toss them all in one place to focus your damage. Spread them out to spread your damage. Toss them between 2 magnets so that they can connect. Coins really let you manipulate conduction to fit whatever scenario you find yourself in. Rockets are like magnets and coins rolled into one. You can use frozen rockets to act like aerial magnets, but just be mindful of guttermen shooting them down. You can also shoot a rocket right after conducting and watch as it zaps everything in its path. Gutter tank rockets also conduct, so if you're facing them, freeze their rockets and they'll do half the work for you. The Sawdall's chainsaw will conduct as long as it's tethered. If you're adept at juggling the chainsaw while setting up conduction, this can be used to add on a little extra damage. The screwdriver is weird. It behaves similarly to magnets, both can be embedded in an enemy, and both will act as lightning rods in levels with natural lightning. However, you cannot proc conduction with just the screwdriver, and unlike magnets, it can only be changed once. The screwdriver can be airborne and still proc Conductor, so you can punch it out of an enemy and it will conduct mid-air, similar to rockets. I'm personally unsure of any practical applications of conducting using the screwdriver, especially considering it consumes a Railcanon charge. So if anyone has some screwdriver conduction tech they'd like to share in the comments, I'd love to hear it. Okay, I've been putting it off for long enough now. I think it's time we finally talk about damage, and I'm not going to sugarcoat this. Things are about to get complicated. So, basically, each embedded nail deals an extra 0.0666 damage and caps out at a maximum of 6 damage at 90 nails. Each magnet deals an extra 1 damage and will stack with the extra nail damage. Now, the Aftershock has a minimum damage of 2, which means if you deal less than 2 damage, it will always round up to 2. So 1 magnet should deal 1 damage, but it will get rounded up to 2. 2 magnets will deal 2 damage, 3 magnets will deal 3 damage, etc. Therefore, the normal maximum amount of damage an initial Aftershock can deal is 9 damage, 3 from the 3 magnets and 6 from 90 nails. Each conductable will add the same amount of damage as the bonus damage from nails or magnets in the conducted enemy. So if you conduct off a 1 magnet enemy, a grounded magnet will add plus 1 damage. Or if you conduct off an enemy with 90 nails, which will deal 6 damage, it will add plus 6. Now, one thing to note is that conductables do not consider the minimum 2 damage of the initial Aftershock, and will only add on the true damage added by nails and magnets. Let's look at an example. Here, this insurrectionist has 1 magnet and 90 nails embedded in it. That's 1 damage from the magnet and plus 6 damage from the nails for a total of 7 damage. Then we factor in the magnet and the 1 coin I toss out. Since the coin and magnet inherit the damage from the nails and magnets, that's plus 7 damage for each, for a total of 21 damage. Seems simple so far? No? Well, it's about to get a lot more complicated. See, any conductible enemy that gets zapped in a conduction chain will themselves proc conduction, and this is where the maths spirals out of control. In theory, it should be as simple as repeating these calculations every time conduction gets re-triggered, but at some point the minimum damage goes from 2 to 0.5. Some sources claim that this happens on every subsequent proc after the first, others claim that it's time-based. Things get even weirder, as sometimes there will be an extra ghost zap that has no explainable origin. This setup with 2 Cerberus should have 8 zaps, 1 from each initial conduction proc and then 3 for each subsequent proc. Yet, conduction procs 9 times here. I really wanted to get to the bottom of this, so I talked to a few conduction experts from the community and even went as far as contacting some wiki editors to find out how they got their information. And unfortunately, the unsatisfying conclusion to all this is no one really knows how it works. Well, no one I talk to anyway. I'm sure there'll be some giga genius in the comments with all the answers, so let's give a preemptive thank you to that guy. But does that even matter? Heck, do any of these numbers really matter when we're in the heat of battle? Not really, no. The important thing is knowing how best to use conduction, and the end result speaks for itself. The best way to look at it is this. Magnets are more effective in enemies than on the ground when we're considering maximum damage, as they'll proc several times each. You want some conductables like coins and rockets to add on additional damage. Oh, and maximize nails, of course. Putting all that together, here's a setup that deals 70.5 damage. Here, each Sisyphus has a magnet in it, and I stick the maximum amount of nails into the first one. Once I've done that, I lay down a few rockets and toss my coins once the Jumpstart procs. This isn't even the maximum damage. If we fully nail up each Sisyphus and do the same thing, we deal a whopping 153.5 damage. Now, will this ever naturally occur in game? No, probably not. But I think this is a good blueprint on how to think about maximizing our damage output. That's almost everything, but there's a few miscellaneous details to cover that didn't really fit anywhere else in the video, so let's rapid fire through a few of those. Water, naturally, is conductive. Using electricity underwater will cause any enemy touching the same body of water to take a minimum of 1 conduction damage. Only enemies will chain lightning underwater, unless one of those enemies is conductive, in which case they'll spread chain lightning to conductables like usual. V1 will also take 50 hard damage if in the water, but this can be iframed by dashing. If an enemy dies, their corpse will still proc Conductor. This is why the Jumpstart works when you kill an enemy. Enemies that leave behind a physical corpse like the Malicious Face or Gutterman, or enemies with long death animations like the Hideous Mass and Mind Flare can still proc Conductor, but won't chain lightning the same way other conductables do. The lightning in levels 5-2 and 5-4 will proc Conductor the same way Ferryman lightning does. Sticking a magnet or the screwdriver in an enemy will call down the wrath of Zeus. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how conduction works. Now, all this messing around in the sandbox and doing all these calculations is fun, but what's most important is actual implementation into normal gameplay. Now, I've been collecting heaps of Cybergrind clips of various conduction setups done in real time, so let's analyze a few of them so I can explain my thought process into how I go about setting these up. Let's start simple. In this clip, I set down some magnets and I magnet a Maurice who I then cable with the Jumpstart. I fire some nails and the Maurice dies and the Jumpstart procs. Then I toss 4 coins to rain electricity down on the field. In this clip, I see lots of enemies spawn near the edge of the arena, so I cover them with nails using the overheat and position myself to pierce several of them with the Railcanon, tossing coins to increase my coverage and clear the wave. Here, I tried to do a simple Jumpstart proc, but I whiffed all my coins into the wall. No matter, I see a Ferryman targeting me, so I pivot to covering this Gutterman in nails and then I charge back the Ferryman. Here, I cable to this Gutterman and then proceed to cover nearby enemies with nails. Then, once the Gutterman dies and the Jumpstart procs, I shoot the Railcanon, piercing several conductive enemies for a Giga proc. I do a similar move in this clip where I move around the arena covering several enemies with nails, and then I pierce as many as I can with a Railcanon, taking out every grounded enemy in the wave. Here, I magnet this hideous mass and perform a rail coin to take it out and proc Conduction. Then I shoot a rocket to guide the electricity over to this side of the arena. Okay, this one is one of my favorites. I start by jump-starting this Maurice, and then after it dies, a Ferryman strikes and procs Conductor again. And then, to round it off, I cover the remaining enemies in nails and Railcanon them for a third proc. All 3 procs in one clip. Okay, this last one isn't a Cybergrind clip, but more of a funny proof of concept. If you juggle magnets as they get destroyed in a conduction chain, you can actually set up an infinite combo. Not really useful in normal play, but still pretty funny. And that is the ultimate guide to conduction. I hope you enjoyed, and more importantly, I hope you learned something. Conduction as a mechanic is pretty under-discussed outside of high-level gameplay, mainly due to how confusing it is, so I hope this video, if nothing else, made things a little less confusing, and might allow you to start implementing conduction into your own gameplay. This video was an absolute doozy, and I couldn't have done it without help, so I want to give out a few shoutouts.
First, I want to shout out Cody Goober from my Discord. He drew the amazing thumbnail for this video and the cute little Visquit microwave skybox you can see in my Cybergrind gameplay. He's a very talented artist and you should definitely check him out. Next, I want to shout out Twitter user 747shove. They were one of the first pioneers of conduction tech after the rework came out with the full Arsenal update. A lot of the stuff in this video I probably learned from their posts. He also helped give me a bit of insight into the inner workings of conduction and the best ways to test it out. Finally, I want to shout out Yakko Craptime from the ULTRAKILL Discord. They're like the conduction expert and they helped me out with parts of the script and gave me a lot of insight into how the damage is calculated. That's it from me, and I'll see you guys next week when this video gets outdated by an update that rolls out, just like what has happened to every guide video I've ever made. Thanks for watching.